This week's theme comes from Ralph Waldo's Emerson's The American Scholar, and the theme is education. The most important thing that I found in this section was on page 244, when referring to books, when they aim not to drill, but to create. This is important because when you are drilled, you are taking someone else's thoughts and not expanding upon them. In a way, you are walking blind or naive. Emerson argues that you need to be able to think for yourselves and not just spread out someone else's ideas. You need to be able to expand upon those ideas and create new ideas for yourself and for others. This is where you achieve. He also quotes that the eyes of man are not in the or the eyes of man are set in his forehead, not in his hind head. Books primarily would be focusing on the past, and while you read them, you should be thinking of the future. That was also on page 244. So if we look at that, and then we look at two important people, both Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. Malcolm X, while in prison, at first was extremely bitter, and through certain things, he discovered the library. He did numerous readings, and there became a point where he did so much reading that when they had mandatory lights out, he would sit by the window where he could see the street light coming through his little cell window, and he would sit there and he would read for hours, and every time the guards would come by for the hourly check, he'd scurry into bed, and once the guards passed, he would come out reading. He must have read hundreds of books throughout this period. Through all the reading, he needed glasses because of the low, dim light. He had trouble seeing later on. And then if you were to look at Martin Luther King and his teachings from Gandhi, he didn't just take Gandhi's teachings, he expanded upon them. And both Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, through all of their education and through their learning, they never took someone else's ideas and then claimed them as their own. They evolved them and pushed them and formed their own ideas, and ideas that helped push a civil rights movement, possibly one of the greatest things to ever happen and monumental things to happen in the 20th century. So we see a lot of change when people read. And while reading, they should be aiming to create. That's why we read. We don't read we read to learn, but what we should also be concentrating on is how is this a reading going to affect us in the future? How can we use this reading and turn it into our own ideas and formulate different opinions about things we have yet to discover? And Ralph Waldo Emerson's section talks a lot about what it means to be a scholar and not just thinking for oneself, but thinking of others and trying to expand upon ideas that have not been expanded on before. Thank you.